This presentation is about our work on common lands with rural communities and also about our efforts on policy advocacy in some state governments in India. It's basically what we call commoning the commons, or work with common lands in India, common lands and water bodies in India. Globally, out of the 14 billion hectares, about 4 billion hectares can be classified as common pool land resources. About 40 to 50% of the entire population survives on these common pool resources for firewood, fodder, non-timber forest produce. I think we'll concentrate more here about fodder. In India, about 14% of the land mass is classified as common lands, and if you include the joint forest management arrangements, you would have something like about under 8-9%. So something like 20 to 22% of India's land mass could be classified as commons, which is almost the size of Kenya. A better indicator would be to look at de facto commons rather than de jure, because though the lands are in the state's possession, at the local level, local land use see them as commons. The dependence on commons across the country varies for a variety of purposes. Talking about fodder, it's somewhere between 20 to 30% in different agroecological conditions, and also the kind of people who live in different parts of the country. The ecological functions of commons, essentially we're looking at fodder. So 45% of land, rural population, 45% of the fodder requirement in rural India is met from commons. Livestock in these production systems play a critical role in nutrient transfers and reallocation of fertility both across space and time, making it fastly available to the farm fields. Commons play a vital role in maintaining hydrological cycles, conservation of biodiversity, and serving as sinks for greenhouse gases. I think conservation of biodiversity, we should see about it, particularly from the ethno-veterinary point of view. We looked at a recent survey which we had done. About 3,000 households in arid and semi-arid and subhumid conditions say that has predictable sheep and goats, there's significant dependence. It's also interesting to see that the stall-fed animals like buffaloes and crossbreds cattle depend on commons for meeting more than 20% of their fodder requirement. Commons, the challenges are, they're seen as wastelands. The previous speaker was also talking about it, and usually diverted for productive uses. World Bank reports that there's a factor of about 10. There's an increased diversion of such land for other uses. And Land Matrix Projects has documented deals and expressions of interest amounting to over 200 million hectares globally since 2000. These are acquisitions of over 200 that involve a conversion of land use from community use or provision of ecosystem services to commercial production. Sadly, in many cases, such land is made available by governments to investors on the assumption that such land is unused or underutilized. The mindset behind these challenges, which directly impact on communities, pastoralists basically, is that there is ecologically, the dilemma is that there is a carrying capacity. That was the dominant mindset, which is passed on to field implementation. The other dilemma is on the tragedy of commons, as if collective action doesn't make business sense, and also that some animals are less productive than the others. The opportunities that we see in India is in the early 90s, we had the 73rd Amendment, which greatly decentralizes governance to local levels. Another important development in 2006 is the right to employment under the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Guarantee Employee Guarantee Scheme, and the Scheduled Tribes and Forest Dwellers Act of 2006, which gives indigenous people the rights over forest lands. There are important watershed development programs, and Green India Mission is in the offing. In this context, Foundation for Ecological Security, a non-government organization, we work with land and water resources essentially through local governance bodies. We work in several parts of the country. The key tenets of our work is working around common lands, institutions, tenure, and restoration of such lands. By working on such lands, an example here of about 5,000 hectares, you can see the changes between 93 and 2006. Essentially, this is a semi-arid situation, so you won't see dense forests. Basically, wastelands reduced from about 1,000 hectares to 206, with increase in open forest mixed degraded. And also it's important to see that there is a shift from agriculture to single crop, meaning more water is available, to double crop. There's an predictable improvement in biomass and water availability, reduced costs in fodder and feed. Livestock holding in poor households increased a peak of 15%. 50% of the households reported an increase in milk production. And looking at common lands and non-common lands, basically common lands which have been regenerated and common lands which have not been regenerated. There is about 3 tons yield in lands, commons which are regenerated. And if you see between 96 and 2005, about 7 years were drought years, though there's a low rainfall, milk yield increased substantially. On the institutional spaces, we find that commons offer a physical setting to revive institutional mechanisms that energize collective action and check undesirable individual behavior. Commons also provide crucial and irreplaceable support to subsistence livelihoods for the poor. Working on common lands provide the landless poor with both the physical and political spaces as equal members of the community. Commons are also good platforms for bringing together issues concerning conservation, social justice, and economic development. While this is going on, the late 2007, 2006 saw a massive change in policy with most of the state governments coming around with biofuel promotion. And it was in this context that FES developed, we started working on policy advocacy to counter threats to commons. We worked with state governments, as land is a state subject. We also began later in 2010 to work with Planning Commission. We also work with several networks of civil society members, practitioners, experts, and planners who are working on surface water, subsurface water, coastal waters, forest patches, basically because commons need commons. We also joined hands with International Association for Study of Commons in holding a conference. We are members of the International Land Coalition, Indigenous Communities and Conserved Areas, essentially to build an international voice for commons. We are also working on the influencing urban mindset, basically that collective action is necessary even in urban spaces. It's not only necessary in villages. There is an important development in this. Essentially, we find great relief from efforts in Wikimedia, Linux, and Creative Commons, which are also around commons in the urban spaces. Influencing programmatic and policy actions, we worked very closely with Rajasthan government, one of the state governments, by taking the ministers and secretaries to village level activities and seeing on the ground, and also telling them that the constituency that they could serve and the vote power that this kind of work has. We had done a legal analysis of the laws and provisions which could help furthering commons, which are also hindering the work on commons. We also provided evidence on economic significance of commons, especially from the livestock point of view. A state-level coordination committee was set up for evolving policies on commons, for identification, management, and development of commons. We said that policy alone would not be enough, so we helped the government come up with operational guidelines for the implementation of grazing land development using an REG, the Rural Employment Guarantee Act. The key tenets of our argument in this policy was the devolution of management and governance of common lands to hamlet-level gram sabhas from the panchayat, from the village councils. The second key tenet was that that appropriate tenure arrangements with such institutions is necessary so that the constituent village communities can make secure investments of their efforts and energies and benefit from accessing the produced from commons. We also need a programmatic approach with a telescopic design such that annual plans are drawn from long-term action plans for ecological restorations. Our work in Rajasthan, what we wanted to do and what are the challenges we were trying to counter and what we were able to achieve, basically on the policy and programmatic action. Basically, we wanted a policy on common pool and land water resources because there was a lack of clarity on what constitutes commons. Forests perceived as exclusive domain of the forest department. What we could achieve is broad definition of common land as land under common use, consensus on including pasture land and revenue wastelands as village commons. We wanted all types of common land to vest with the panchayat, whereas the challenge was that under the existing rules, the existing provision confined the powers of the panchayat to common land within the settlement area, that is right in their backyards, whereas grazing lands are about a couple of kilometers away. They have added a rule vesting all common land and grazing lands within the panchayat circle. Panchayat circle is about 5-kilometer radius. We wanted a standing committee for natural resource and biodiversity management at Gram Panchayat level, which Biodiversity Act also mandates that. The challenge was that if you add a new committee, it would open doors for several other communities, making all of them dysfunctional. So what we settled on for was integrate the functions of management of common lands in the Standing Committee for Development and Production, which is present there. And we also could manage scope for habitation level subcommittees in the policy. Secure tenurial rights to the community. There was an absence of such legal provision, and there was a neglect of customary uses and pastoralist communities. What we could achieve was maintaining a prohibitory order book which prohibits the diversion of such land for other land use, which also makes it difficult by charging them a fee if at all it is diverted for other land use. We could also bring to focus the rights of customary users and pastoralist communities in this policy. The other dimensions are we wanted an increase in the extent of grazing land and limit the diversion of commons for other purposes. Basically, we wanted to challenge the competing land uses which are coming from biofuels and special economic zones. What we were able to achieve was scope for converting revenue-based lands into grazing lands or leasing it to the Gram Panchayats. There was a scope, it doesn't mandate an inclusion, expansion. We also wanted inclusion of small ruminants while defining the rights to grazing. Unfortunately, small ruminants in Rajasthan context, the common lands are decided based on cattle heads, which mean only the bigger animals. We wanted sheep and goat included in it. We are unsuccessful so far, but we could incorporate them in the operational guidelines for the grazing land development. We wanted an increase in public investment on commons, which was possible through the operational guidelines that we could do through NREG. We wanted a holistic view to greening, going beyond trees and plantations. The challenge was generally it was monoplantations and plantation of exotic species. We could emphasize on restoration of regeneration of ecosystem functions and services. Similar actions are also happening in Andhra Pradesh and Karnataka, where in Andhra the government has planned a program in 10 districts. In Karnataka, the High Court has ordered development of common lands in 2 states. We are also a member of the 12th Planning Working Group, where we included commons as an important element. Fortunately, about a year back, the Supreme Court of India came up with a judgment asking the governments to come up with policies on evict people from common lands and also restore them to panchayats and gram sabhas. And we are happy that several state governments, several high courts have also come up with several enabling orders which would help us in furthering our work on policy advocacy with the state governments. Lastly, our basic argument is that about 40,000 crores, that's about 7,300 million annually is spent on NREG, rural employment, on non-private lands, which is basically common lands. This is about 50 million hectares. We are saying by tethering this Rural Employment Guarantee Act with the fundamental tenets of Model Common Land Bill, the institutional investment which is currently missing alongside financial investment through MNREG could be filled. The right to employment and right over resources combined together can have a significant impact in creating durable assets, both as biophysical resources and as institutional regimes. Thank you.